Hello and welcome to Premier Study in Investing. It's great to have you. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be talking about Moderna. As you know, I like to do one of these updates about every 2 weeks or so. It's really interesting to me. It's my largest position and I'm primarily short. So I do have puts, but I also have some calls on this stock. And what I've been thinking about is essentially from my last video, I was saying that we looked at the bird flu thing. I basically decided that's really not an issue. That was 2 videos ago. We looked some at why they are running this weird vaccine for this disease that nobody gets in the developed world called Nipah. It's very deadly. And I started one with the idea based on a Whitney Webb article and Max Jones. They teamed up looking at this gentleman that was kind of slid into the HHS under Robert Kennedy. And there was some argument that this guy is like a big tech venture capitalist tied with sort of the whole, those guys, Whitney Webb and that crew. They do a lot of work with the connection between big tech and the military and the government and how they all kind of like are this blob that they call it. So I kind of looked at, okay, well, maybe there's some weird stuff going on with this bird flu stuff and this Nipah thing. Like, why is Moderna as a company talking about and developing these kind of weird vaccines for these weird diseases? I looked at bird flu and said, basically, I'm not that concerned about it. Then, after that, I started thinking about, okay, definitely we're in a downtrend here. We have been for a while. We went through that crazy week with the Trump tariffs and all the changes that happened with that, wild swings in the market. But through it all, I mean, Moderna's continued to trend down in price. We're at like $25. It's April 22nd here today. And $25 puts us a few dollars under the book value per share. So I've been thinking about book value per share a lot. All along the way, I've been thinking, wow, I mean, we were trading at like $30, and so that had us somewhere at like, 1.1 times book, or earlier than that, book value was a little bit higher, so we're at like $33, and book value was like 30, so still like 1.1 times book. And I was thinking for a few months, I'm like, okay, this is really wild. Like, traditionally, if a stock price drops below book value, it sort of becomes, it enters in that territory and it starts to become attractive in terms of a buyout or a takeover. Like today, for example, we have book value per share of $28.24, most recent quarter. And if we could come in and just buy all the shares for $25, let's say, there's like a $3.25 difference between what we can buy it for and what we can sell the assets for, in theory, right? And so that's like a profit of $3.25 per share. And if we own all of them, there's like 385 million shares. So we're talking a profit of like over $1 billion. It's like, man, great. And obviously there's people in the world that work in private equity, that they do leverage buyouts. They take companies private, they rework them, they sell them back later, hostile takeovers. There's that whole crowd, right, in the mergers and acquisition space. And clearly, I mean, this is a company that's in the S&P 500. So clearly, there are people that are looking at that. Well, this is a problem for me. This is a risk as a person who's primarily short. Because what I basically have is out-of-the-money puts. So I have puts strike prices of like $22.50, $20, $17.50, $15, and now you can buy them for as low as $12.50, right? It's sort of catastrophic from where we are now. It's like a 60% drop to get down to $12.50. By the way, you can't say exactly, but it would take that kind of price drop, like down to like $13 a share, for this company to fall out of the S&P 500. So yeah, it'd be like $13 a share or something in that ballpark before they'd come out of the S&P 500. And so, I mean, that would be a big deal. But obviously, if we're at $13 a share, there have been other big deals that would have occurred to get us down to that price, right? So that's a long ways away from where we are now. Anyway, so going back to this idea of what if there's a takeover? What if there's a buyout? What if it's acquired? And Yeah, just to be clear, I mean, any of the puts that I have would go to zero. I wouldn't get any of that time value back. any of that theta. This is just the days of opportunity that I have, right? They would just all go to zero. Anything that was, below, that had strike prices below the acquisition price, it would just go to zero. It'd be like, that's the price. Just figure that is essentially the same as if we're at the expiration date on all the contracts. The prices would be the closing price would be the same as the acquisition price. So just for example, let's say it was bought out at $40 a share, which would be a pretty good premium here. It'd be like 85% premium. I don't know if that would be reasonable, but I thought, man, I got to be protecting myself to some degree because there is some potential of that happening, and especially as it dropped below book value. Especially in those first few days, like when it broke below intraday, I was like, whoa, that's nuts. And then when it like closed below book value, I was like, whoa, that's nuts. And then when it did like a couple days of closes and opens below book value, I was like, that's really weird. I wasn't exactly, the market was surprising me. I was thinking, man, people are way more pessimistic about this stock than I was assuming they were going to be. I thought there was going to be buyers for sure at $28, like all day. And that hasn't really been true. What's kind of been more true over the last like 2 or 3 weeks is that there's definitely been a lot of buyers at $24 or anything under $24. So 23 anything, a bunch of buyers step in. 24.50, buyers are stepping in. 24.75, buyers are stepping in. So there's a lot of people that are willing to buy. But that's, like I said, a good $2-3 under book value, maybe even $3.50 under book value. So the longer that goes on, what that has made me think, right or wrong, and this is, I think, a question all of us have to be asking ourselves, and it's good to try to talk it out, write it out, or put it specifically, not as just some like abstract, maybe that's a problem, but like really try to be specific with it. And I think for me, every day that it continues to open and close under book is another day where it's like, I just don't think mergers and acquisition and private equity is interested. There's too many threats. So let's talk about some of the threats. On the downside, obviously we have a deteriorating share price. I'll show you this article that came out from the White House. You've probably seen it before. It's gotten a lot of coverage. It's a week old, but it's basically about a lot of missteps from the government, etc., things we got wrong. It came out actually, I just found out about it, but it came out December 4th, 2024. So it's old. And definitely Moderna share prices has been deteriorating since then. So it could be cause and effect from that document. I can show it to you here. Yeah, so it's this December 4th, 2024 document, select subcommittee, Brand Winstrip. Anyway, it's like an after-action report. It's really interesting, but it's like 557 pages, and it covers all sorts of stuff. Missteps from individual doctors, big tech, coercion from, like the health department, HHS maybe, on Meta. A lot of insider emails, a lot of doctors talking about pressure to go ahead and approve the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. Even early chat before anyone talked about it. If you remember back to when these new vaccines were released, and it was super fast, but no one was saying, and hey, you guys are all going to be forced to take this thing, otherwise you're going to lose your job. That wasn't said publicly. That was being talked about privately. So there's a lot of things like this, the mandates, the insider chat amongst insiders in FDA, CDC, and stuff like that, that come out. Unscientific stuff. It's not like a lot of new information that you've never heard of. Masks don't work. Social distancing was dumb. Lockdowns, put kids at delayed test scores, bankrupted a lot of businesses. Like not that much new information. Some new information as far as the screenshots of emails from certain people that left or got fired or being accused of fraud or actions unbecoming of a federal employee, things like this. But just to kind of get the stamp of official approval from the United States that, hey, EcoHealth Alliance was involved, was a problem. Here's the stuff. National Institute of, so NIH, handing out money, fraud in the financial space, number of businesses that went out, transnational fraud. World Health Organization. They just cover like all the things, and it's obviously like sort of a bit depressing. I spent maybe hour and a half, 2 hours reading it on Sunday, and it's like this is just a bunch of missteps, bad information. I don't see how in any way this is good for share price for anybody that's in the vaccine business, Moderna or otherwise. So I just think this is really interesting that this came out. Obviously, I'm behind the ball as far as this has been out for 4 or 5 months now, but it's really interesting to go back and remember, oh yeah, what about that crazy thing that was part of all this? Or, oh yeah, like what about this guy? Or like, oh yeah, the Twitter posts or X, whatever it was at that point, from the FDA about horse medicine and the demonization of off-label drugs and doctors trying to help people, and the robustness of natural immunity, and just on and on and on and on and on and on. Moderna isn't named a lot in this document, but it is just really interesting. I had a friend, I don't know, a couple days ago, messaged me something. Jimmy Dore, he's going over this article in this website. A lot of people went over this website. John Campbell, Jimmy Dore. I'm sure tons and tons and tons of people have already reviewed these points and the origin story and all that stuff put out by the White House. So, I mean, I'm not like the first one to talk about this, but the thing that was really interesting going back to this PDF was that they talked again and again about these decisions, these missteps, this coercion, these mandates have resulted in less trust from the government, which is obvious, and more hesitancy for vaccines. Again, obvious, but just to have it officially stated and recognized and then put out there as a public document, not that many people are going to really read it, but it just affirms that sales are probably not going to be good. I don't think anything really, really crazy is going to happen to take it to like single digits, because cash per share is something like $16. So to drop below cash per share, it's really, really, really crazy. Then it's like very likely to be a takeover target. So this is Moderna here, we'll call it $25.49. It's been below the 200-day moving average, the 50-day, and the 20-day moving average. Cash per share is $18.21. To drop seriously below $18.21, one thing would happen. If they get to about $13-ish, they'll drop out of the S&P 500. Now you can see that these are traded in VTI. This is the Vanguard's All Equity US. VOO is like a S&P 500. VB, VO, SPY is S&P 500. IVV, I'm not sure. XBI, XLV is the, I think it's the iShares Healthcare Sector ETF. So, it's held by a lot of people simply because they're wrapped up in the S&P 500 or some other broadly held ETF. But, so if they get to like $13 a share, they'll basically fall out of a lot of those ETFs, definitely the S&P 500 ETFs. I don't know about the healthcare ones. I should be more specific. They'll fall out of the S&P 500 ETFs if they fall out of the S&P 500, which they would do. The bottom S&P 500 companies have market cap of around like 6 billion. And what's the market cap on this? 9.86 billion. So, you'd have to see that share prices get cut in half basically to become a $5 billion market cap company. All right. Other things to notice, like I usually do, this has been the most heavily shorted healthcare sector company, just healthcare sector company, not the whole market, but just healthcare sector company since September, August of 2024, even maybe a month or two before that. Used to be shorted at like 9%, 9.5%, 10%, 11%. Now we're at 14.58% short float. Yeah. So I do have some calls that are like way, way out of the money, like $100 strike price, $200 strike price, because this is the crazy thing, and I'll end with this. If you've listened to the people that are commenting and talking about the tariffs, you have smart people on both sides. Some people are like, this is a disaster. Mark Meldrum, for example, he's like, I'm shorting this market anytime it rallies. He's like, these tariffs are so dumb. They are not going to be able to improve trade deficit. No way. And he'll draw out the equations on how that would work. And He does weekly videos. They're on YouTube. They're free. He is a CFA, so this Chartered Financial Analyst prep provider, but he does a lot of content, really interesting. So go check him out. He's for free. Mark Meldrum on YouTube. But he's like, this isn't going to work. I'm shorting it. Now you have other people. I don't know if it's because of their like Republican leaning associations, maybe. But have you guys noticed this when you hear people talking positive about the Trump tariffs and this whole idea of bringing manufacturing back home? Sooner or later, it's really weird. They don't elaborate much, but you'll hear more and more. This has been scaring me. People say, well, this is because we need this because we are not ready to have like an industrial military manufacturing base that could support us similar to like a World War II thing. And it's like, are you guys kidding me with that? Literally, like if the end of last year at Christmas, at the end of 2024, the only thing you'd really hear is like dry runs from China about Taiwan invasion. You're talking about, what about our semiconductors? What about our chips? Hey, we got Taiwan Semiconductor building a big factory in Arizona, I think Phoenix, in the United States. And that was it. And now you have all these sort of right-leaning commentators and investor types that are saying, this is right. This is the right move. We need to do this now. I think Kevin O'Leary, maybe even, said something similar. Like, this is our window. We got to bring the manufacturing back so we can get ready to fight a hot war, a kinetic war. Planes, drones, tanks, rifles, Kevlar, ATVs, boats, ships, aircraft carriers, planes. I don't know if I already said planes, but it's like, holy smokes, guys. Like, if that's what you think this is about, then you need to say more. You can't just like kind of try to slip that in there and then go off with some like everything is normal spiel, because that's not like a normal market or future trajectory. And they don't usually say much because I think it's perhaps sort of indefensible. But if that's the conversation, and this is a political stock, right? I mean, this is a very political, it's not an agnostic stock politically. This is a politicized stock. If that's part of the conversation, if Whitney Webb and Max Jones are right, and that they have this like O'Neill guy that they've got into the HHS, and that he is going to sort of be pushing this venture capitalist, this blob strategy of lots of money and lots of surveillance, lots of control, lots of tech, lots of everything, insane biometric surveillance, etc., etc. Satellogics and all that stuff. If that's more the story, then I guess to say it simply, if these guys are going to bring in a kinetic war scenario into the economics and the Trump administration's plan, then to me that makes gain of function bioweapons completely on the table, completely as much in the conversation as we got to do 125%, tariffs on China so that we can recreate a hollowed out, manufacturing base and bring it back into America so we can start building tanks and engines and airplanes and assault rifles. If that's what you guys really think, then if you take that same mentality, you turn to this stock, then weaponizing Nipah makes total sense. Weaponizing bird flu, gain of function makes total sense. We know that the gain of function, there's like 5 receptors that you need to alter in order to make it transmissible from human to human, which it's not right now, unlike what the 60 Minutes piece would have you believe. Those aired this last Sunday, 2 days ago. Big fear piece. People are going to die from bird flu. It's like there's not even you can't even transmit it from person to person. It's not even possible. They didn't say that. I mean, they didn't say that clearly. They made you very afraid. That seemed to be the idea. And I'm not sure if that was in order to start training Americans to think about getting this, that it's a huge, terrible, awful disease and it'll kill us all. And so we better, early training, get people mentally prepared to take bird flu vaccines. Or is that some, piece that was encouraged by the government, Department of Defense to, hey, let's try to push through some, we're going to need some protection. This is a likely candidate for a bioweapon. Was that what that piece was about? Because it certainly wasn't about protecting Americans and giving them peace to say, hey, all this bird flu talk is no big deal. Don't be afraid. It doesn't transmit human to human. That's not the piece. That wasn't the piece. The piece was very fear driven, and it wasn't very applicable. It wasn't like, hey, for those of you guys that are thinking about drinking raw milk, don't drink raw milk. It's, cook your eggs and all that stuff. Don't bodybuilders just eat them raw. I'm not sure if that, but it wasn't that type of piece. It wasn't a calm down everybody. Bird flu doesn't transmit person to person, and beware of drinking raw milk. Have a great day. Enjoy time with your family. Enjoy your Sunday off before work on Monday. It wasn't that type of piece. It was a piece about make everyone super afraid we're all going to die type of piece. Can't sleep at night. Doctors can't sleep at night. All this stuff. It's real crazy. I don't know why they did it. But if that's like the type of conversation that they're going to put on 60 Minutes, and if that's the type of conversation and analysis that these like sort of pro-tariff people are doing, is that this is all about a big war coming up, then I think you got to, for me, I'd take that information like, well, I got to have some calls at $100 strike or $200 strike. Super deep out of the money, super long term, really, really cheap premiums. But there is a non-zero probability on the idea that COVID was a sort of a dry run, and that gain of function is not going away, and that war is not going away, and people might say that it's dirty fighting, but biological warfare would definitely fall into this overall ramp up our manufacturing capability on the military side of things. It would definitely include, stuff like what I'm talking about. So those are my thoughts. It's become harder in the last 4 weeks to think that this is going to be a takeover at $23, $24. If you can't hold 23 and you can't hold 20, if you can't hold 15, I mean, what PE firm is going to buy it? I mean, you can only, cost cut and do so much for a product that everyone is terrified of or doesn't feel like they need anymore, that they got coerced into taking. So it's become, I've lowered my probability on a buyout or an acquisition, but all this war talk, I think I've shifted from like the $30 strike. I've reduced my number of calls, $30 strike calls for the merger and acquisition scenario. Cut those down by about half, and I'm going to sell some of the way out of the money calls, like $115, $100 strikes, $200 strikes. I'm going to get rid of a little bit of those. But I mean, if you get that type of event, I mean, those things are going to be worth so much money. It'd just be wild. Otherwise, I'm just I guess mostly waiting until this Arbutus situation, September, I think it is, 2025. Waiting for this work to come out of the HHS with RFK Jr. about this vaccine autism link, whether it is real or not. I can't really see any other ultra terrible news that would happen. It's probably going to trade sideways. Who the heck knows what's going to happen? Trump is a total wild card, so trade the volatility, scalp it, and stay net short. That's my new thoughts on it. So let's look down here real quick, see if those insiders have done any more buying, because that was the big that was one of the big stories last time. Insider buying. It doesn't look like anything significant has happened since those two guys bought an odd number of shares at $21 or $31 and change. Real weird. I messed this guy's name up, Paul Sagan and Stefan Bonsell. So, all right, well, God bless you guys. Hope all is well. Talk to you next time. Thanks.